So I'm returning to making some astrology videos with the hopes that I can help folks who are just beginning to study your chart with some very basic concepts that I believe are the most important ones for you to understand, not just who you are, what you are, but why you are. So I will begin with the north and south nodes of the moon. And to that end, I just want to remind you that you come to this incarnation as an angel taking form. So, in other words, you are an eternal being who chose actually your astrology chart as the model or the form of what you now have, your manifested self. So that's important because a lot of times people studying astrology ask questions like, well, what am I like? What does my Mars mean? And it's definitely good to look at all those features and try to figure out how best to work them. But it only helps if you can keep in mind that your entire purpose here is to channel the universal will through your incarnation. So, for the people who study Kabbalah here, I just want to remind you that you, the angelic self, and the will of God, those are key to Hokmah, which is the second sphere above the abyss. So the point is, that is the force that you're channeling, and you've chosen in Binah, the third sphere, a form, and that's your chart. So the basic question to be asking yourself is, how do I fulfill the will? Oftentimes in Thelema we say my will. The truth is it's God's will through my incarnation. So to that end, let's talk about the north and south nodes of the moon. I'll talk in another video about the symbolism behind that, but right now I'm just going to talk about interpreting your north and south nodes generally. And then in other videos I can get into specifics about depending on which house you have them in or in which sign you have them in. So when you come down to take your incarnation, the first things that happens is that you forget why you came here. So a lot of the work that we do as human beings, trying to fulfill ourselves, trying to break out of the slavery of basically the conditioning that we've had one way or another through church, family, maybe school, is to try to figure out what is essential, what is it that I actually desire as the essential person that I am, the being that I am. And one of the ways that we can gather enough energy and strength is to work with the north and south nodes of the moon. So the north and south nodes of the moon are always polar opposites of each other. So if the north node, which is it's symbolized by a horseshoe with a point up like this, the south node being the opposite, it's like a point, it's like a horseshoe with the point downward. Those are always polar opposites in your chart. And the reason is, well, there's a reason astronomically, but as far as symbolically, the reason is that one of them, the south node, represents the basically the very ingrained habits and tendencies that you have, not in this personality, not in this lifetime, but through many, many, many lifetimes. So it's basically a distortion, or if you will, a habit, just a strong habit in a certain direction, again, symbolized by the sign in the house, which is essentially a magnet pulling you, so you're kind of a safe go-to space whenever you're under stress will be always what's represented by your south node. And on the one hand, that's not bad. You can always draw on that because it's something it's like falling off a bicycle, if you will. It's so easy to do that you can just do that thing that's represented by that. And that's a point of strength for you. However, part of what we want to accomplish as people striving to outgrow just what everybody else expects of us and all the conditioning we placed, and rather to fulfill that one spot in the cosmos that only you can, then you need to break through the thrall. And part of that is basically balancing out the tendency of your south node with what is represented by the north node, again, directly opposite the south node. So whereas the south node can be something that if you're, again, under stress or simply not paying attention to so to speak, asleep, you will automatically fall into that way of being. And that will leave you essentially asleep, unable to awaken your consciousness enough to not be conditioned by the world around you. So the best thing to do is to become aware of that tendency, as well as to balance it with the North Node. So the North Node represents essentially an arrow or a direction in which you should push to be able to balance the South Node. And again, that will likely be something that, at least when you're young, feels foreign, unfamiliar. It feels uncomfortable because it doesn't feel like you're good at it, whatever it is. Um, and so, it can be uncomfortable. Now, in the course of doing a lot of readings for people, and I tend to have clients that are, uh, spiritual seekers and people who worked on themselves, like maybe in therapy and things like that. So it's not like the people I'm seeing are unconscious. So my experience is that a lot of spiritual seekers, and again, people who are simply working on being self-aware and realizing themselves and breaking through, trauma and many things, those types of people will often already automatically be working toward their North Node. It's something that they feel they should do. They have a sense of it. So it could be intuitive, even if it's not easy. So I just want to point that out. It's not that you will find the North Node to be this, necessarily something you've never tried before when you start becoming aware of it, but it's something that you have to, through your life, basically always push in that direction, and that will automatically balance what your general karmic tendencies are. To return then to the beginning of this video, I just want to remind you that, have you think about what that means. So essentially, if you started out and you had a body of habits before you came into this lifetime, those body of habits weren't like a sphere. They weren't perfectly symmetrical. They had certain tendencies, certain things you've done. So like, just to give an example, let's say that in, many, many lifetimes, you've been this warrior type and sort of like self-sufficient and not relying on others, just basically a lone wolf, let's say, many times. Let's just say, for the sake of argument. Then that will be part of the tendencies that you bring to any incarnation. Now, if you come into an incarnation and you need to basically do something new to balance that out, then you might have your North Node, let's say in Libra, which is across from Aries. Aries is that tendency to be me first. I rely on myself. I'm the go-getter. And then it may be that you've chosen a chart with a North Node in Libra. So that's more like relating to others, giving to others, or ministering to their needs in balance with your own in Aries. So basically, you have to come into a place where you're going to be changing what you basically can do the next time you come into incarnation. You're actually changing your body of habits. You're reconditioning not just yourself as this person that you are, but yourself as the angel, as the eternal being, who is able to kind of gather another layer of tendency or character, and then to that you can bring to the next incarnation and do something new. So in just another way to fulfill the universal will in your own unique way again. So that is the basics of the North Node and the South Node of the Moon, and how to balance them and why to balance them.